Picture this. Stone walls slick with the sweat of the damned, chains rattling like the ghosts of fallen legions in the shadowed underbelly of Rome's grand forums. His dignity was already stripped before the first lash fell, a toga turned to rags in the merciless sun, and that day would unravel the empire's veil of civility, exposing the rusted chains that bound not just the body, but the soul. Hit subscribe now. 80% miss these crimson secrets of history, but you're diving into the abyss with us. Drop a comment. Where are you watching from? Now, let us begin. In the heart of the eternal city, where marble gleamed like decaying gold under the relentless gaze of Jupiter, punishment was not merely justice, it was a spectacle etched in blood and shame. Thieves, those shadows who dared pilfer from the mighty, faced the searing kiss of the brand upon their foreheads, a mark that burned deeper than flesh, proclaiming their infamy to every passer-by. Verified by the annals of Roman law, this was no fleeting pain. The iron, heated in forges that echoed with the empire's unyielding wrath, pressed into skin, sizzling as it carved eternal disgrace. The thief's face became a living scroll of condemnation, his eyes forever downcast, avoiding the sneers of free men who once called him neighbor. But the cruelty had only just begun. Debtors, ensnared by the webs of usury in a city bloated with wealth, were stripped bare and paraded through the bustling markets, their naked forms a canvas for mockery. Chains, rusted, heavy as the weight of forgotten oaths, clanked around their ankles, dragging them past vendors hawking spices and silks, while crowds jeered, pelting them with rotten fruit that burst like blood upon pale skin. 90% don't know this bloody secret, but you're about to uncover it. These processions weren't random. They were orchestrated by creditors, a ritual of humiliation that stripped not just clothes, but the very essence of Roman manhood. Legends whisper of one such wretch, a once proud merchant whose cries mingled with the laughter of children, his body trembling in the dust-choked air. His paranoia festered like a wound untreated, ambition rotting into delusion as he clawed for redemption that never came. The rusted chains pulsed with every heartbeat, a symbolic reminder that freedom was an illusion for the fallen. In a haunting irony, these men built their debts on dreams of empire, unaware they were forging their own shackles. His naked march was a throne of thorns, one chronicler might have etched. Dignity bled out in the streets, crimson rivers of lost honor. And then, the shock. Flesh tore as the whip lashed unexpectedly, blood spraying in a crimson arc, bones cracking under the force, his scream painting the cobblestones red in a frenzy that lasted mere heartbeats. What happened next defies imagination. For slaves, the furka awaited. A wooden yoke clamped around the neck, forcing the condemned to carry it through the throngs, arms outstretched like a crucified spectre. This was no mere burden, it was soul-crushing betrayal by the very society that owned them. Adulterers and forgers alike bore this mark, their steps labored, sweat mingling with tears as the wood chafed raw flesh. The psychological insight here cuts deep. In the mind of the punished, every glance from the crowd was a dagger, paranoia blooming into madness, convincing them that even the gods had turned away. Yet amid the gore-infused chaos, a vivid sensory detail lingers, the metallic tang of rusted chains mixed with the acrid smoke of branding irons, a scent that clung to the air like decaying ambition. Chains rusted, but shame endured eternal, as the poets might lament. His legacy was already ash before he drew his first breath of freedom denied. This mirrors today's public shaming on digital forums, where reputations are branded online, humiliation amplified by invisible crowds. But the empire's blade hungered for more. Slaves caught in theft faced not just the furka, but escalation to crucifixion's shadow, their bodies hoisted as warnings. The action surged, guards dragged them forth, fists pounding flesh in rhythmic fury, blood welling from split lips as the crowd bayed for justice. Gore heavy, the scene erupted, limbs twisted, skin ripping under iron grips, a spray of crimson as nails prepared for worse torments. His crown of humiliation pulsed anew, rusted chains echoing in the forum's din. In another twist, forgers of documents, those who betrayed the written word, were banished to labor mills, grinding grain like beasts, their intellects decayed to brute force. The irony stings. They who falsified history became erased footnotes themselves. What would you do in his place? Fight the chains or submit to the shame? Comment below and hit that like button if this chills you. Was his madness justified, or was he doomed from birth? Vote in the poll above. Chains of public shame. The legions marched under eagles of gold, but beneath that luster lurked the rusted chains of discipline, forged in the fires of betrayal and blood. In the camps where Rome's might was honed, deserters faced the fustuarium, a punishment as brutal as it was intimate, where comrades turned executioners. Verified in the histories of Polybius and Livy, this was no distant decree. The offender ran a gauntlet of his own unit, each soldier armed with clubs or stones, beating him to death in a frenzy of enforced loyalty. The air thickened with dust and despair, the ground slick with the fallen's essence. But the savagery escalated. His ambition to flee rotted into terror as the first blow landed, paranoia gripping his mind like a vice. Every face a former brother, now a masked fiend. The rusted chains symbolized not just restraint, but the decaying bond of brotherhood, clanking invisibly in the hearts of those who wielded the weapons. In haunting irony, these men who swore oaths to protect one another became the instruments of mutual destruction, their unity a gilded grave. His shield brothers became his butchers, the scrolls declare. Blood-soaked thrones of loyalty crumbled to dust. And the shock struck swift, bones shattered with a crack like thunder, flesh ripping in gore-infused agony, crimson spraying as clubs descended in unrelenting rhythm, his final gasp lost in the melee. What happened next defies the soul's endurance. For entire cohorts faltering in battle, decimation awaited. A lottery of death where every 10th man was selected by lot, then clubbed or stoned by his 9 comrades. 90% overlook this crimson ritual, but here it unfolds. Crassus revived it during the Spartacus revolt, executing hundreds to instill fear. The psychological dive is brief but piercing. The survivors' minds fractured, delusion setting in that fate's dice could roll against them next. Ambition for glory twisted into survival's madness. A vivid sensory assault. The metallic bite of rusted chains mingled with the coppery reek of fresh spilled blood, chains that bound the legion's fate. Decimation's dice rolled in rivers of red, a quotable lament. This echoes modern military courts, where unit cohesion masks the betrayal of harsh justice, reminding us that power's price often falls on the rank and file. The action pulsed fast, lots drawn in tense silence, then eruption. Comrades lunging, fists and stones flying, blood arcing as skulls caved, the ground a churning mire of limbs and gore. But cruelty's blade twisted deeper. Legends whisper of one legion under Caesar, where decimation spared none the stain, their hands forever crimson with kin's blood. His legacy decayed like the empire's fringes, rusted chains pulling tighter with each betrayal. In another beat, centurions enforced lesser shames, floggings that stripped skin and spirit, whips cracking like serpents' tongues. The motif returned, rusted chains rattling in the wind-swept camps, a harbinger of downfall. What would you do, draw the lot or swing the club? Comment below and smash that like if this grips your core. Was decimation's terror effective or a seed of rebellion? Vote in the poll above. Brotherhood's bloody betrayal. Echoes of erased names whispered through the Senate's halls, where gold leaf flaked like decaying ambition, and the rusted chains of memory bound the mighty in invisible torment. For elites who overreached, emperors like Nero or Caligula, damnatio memoriae awaited, a punishment beyond death. Their images chiseled from monuments, names scraped from inscriptions, as if they had never breathed Rome's air. Verified in archaeological remnants, such as the Arch of Septimius Severus, where Geta's face was obliterated after his brother Caracalla's fratricide. This was humiliation eternal, a soul-crushing erasure. But the madness deepened. His delusion of immortality rotted into paranoia, convinced even in death that shadows plotted his unmaking. The rusted chains pulsed symbolically, chains of legacy now corroded by successors' wrath. The irony haunts. These builders of empires constructed their own oblivion, thrones becoming voids in history's tapestry. His name faded like blood in rain, the chroniclers etched. Erased emperors, ghosts in gilded ruins. Then the shock. Chisels hammered stone in furious rhythm, fragments flying like shattered bone, a metaphorical gore where legacy bled out in dust-choked silence. What defies comprehension followed. Exile compounded the shame. Senators like those under Domitian banished to barren isles, stripped of wealth, their villas seized, names forbidden in utterance. 90% ignore this silent blade, but it cuts deep. Commodus suffered damnatio post-mortem, his statues toppled, a public ritual of degradation. The psychological insight pierces. In isolation, ambition curdled into madness. The exiled mind a labyrinth of betrayed alliances. Sensory vividness clings, the scrape of tools on marble, mingled with the rust's bitter tang, chains that echoed in empty forums. Exile's island was a crown of thorns eternal. This parallels today's cancel culture, where public figures are digitally erased, their contributions scrubbed in waves of collective judgment. Action surged. Mobs descended on statues, hammers swinging, metal screeching as heads rolled, a spray of stone dust like blood from ancient veins. But betrayal's venom spread. Legends whisper of Sejanus, Tiberius's prefect, whose damnatio saw his body dragged through streets, torn by hooks in flesh-ripping frenzy. His downfall was ash-scented, rusted chains, crumbling yet unbreakable. In further irony, these erasures preserved their infamy through the act itself. What would you sacrifice to avoid erasure? Comment your thoughts, and like if this unnerves you. Was damnatio a just purge, or history's cruelest lie? Vote in the poll above. Erased from eternity. The Tiber's waters ran crimson with the empires discarded, where decaying gold of aqueducts overlooked agonies that twisted flesh and fate. For parricides, the Poena Culi loomed, a sack of leather sewn tight, enclosing the condemned with beasts. A snarling dog, hissing serpent, screeching monkey, and clucking rooster, all hurled into the river's depths. Verified in Cicero's writings and Justinian's codes, this was no swift end. The sack thrashed as animals clawed and bit, the drowned screams muffled in watery gore. But the horror intensified. His rotting ambition birthed delusion, paranoia that familial blood demanded beastly retribution. The rusted chains embodied the sack's bind, symbolic of empire's decaying grip on morality. Irony drips like blood. Killers of kin, meant to nurture life, met death amid nature's frenzy, their legacy a submerged scream. The sack was a throne of writhing doom, scrolls proclaim. Beasts feasted on betrayal's flesh. Shock erupted. Claws raked skin in crimson sprays, bites tearing muscle, blood bubbling as the river claimed its prize in choking agony. Imagination recoils at what ensued, crucifixion reserved for slaves and rebels. Spartacus's followers lining the Appian Way, nailed naked to crosses, bodies contorted in public shame, birds pecking at exposed wounds. 90% evade this truth, but it stares back. 6,000 crucified after the revolt, warnings rotting in the sun, psychological torment brief, minds shattered in prolonged pain, madness claiming the crucified before breath fled. Sensory assault, the creak of wood under weight, rusted chains of nails biting bone, mingled with decay's stench. Crosses lined roads like bloodied sentinels. This reflects modern spectacles of execution, where humiliation amplifies deterrence in shadowed regimes. Fury built. Hammers drove spikes through wrists, blood gushing, bones splintering in gore-heavy cracks, limbs hoisted high amid jeers. Yet more awaited. Damnatio ad bestias flung criminals to arena beasts, lions ripping throats in sprays of red, crowds roaring as flesh yielded. His empire's end was foretold in rusted chains, now dissolved in the arena's sand. Legends whisper of Vestals buried alive, their chastity's betrayal sealed in earth. In this wind-down, the rusted chains rust to dust, empire's humiliations fading yet echoing through time. What price do we pay for power today, when shame still chains the mighty? Drop your thoughts below. Subscribe for more bloody truths and ring the bell to never miss a whisper from the archive. What extreme would break you, the sack or the cross? Comment and like if this devastates. Was